Staying fit during the holidays is totally doable, and we've got some simple hacks that will help you stay on track without sacrificing any of the fun. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. As we ease into the holiday season, we all know how easy it is to let our fitness goals fall by the wayside. Between busy schedules, festive temptations, and cold winter weather, it can be very tough to prioritize our health and wellness. But the truth is, it's more important now than ever to stay active and focused on our fitness goals. So this might be a little premature,
Nope, but
but
it's already almost halfway through November.
I know you blink and it's another 2 weeks, and we're going to be right at Thanksgiving. So we did just get back from a trip, which we thought would be nice to kind of relate to because it's a lot of the same concepts. But really, highlighting the main problems, it's really whenever life gets busy, we deprioritize ourselves, we deprioritize our health. We say we're going to pick it back up when things calm down later, but later happens a lot later than we actually thought it was going to when a lot of the damage is already done. And most people don't really understand how little you actually need to do to maintain that progress, which we do have a full episode on as far as the minimums for each of these pillars we'll dive into, and
Well,
what's effective with those.
before we dive in, I think it's something that came up on our coaches roundtable call that we do once a month for all of our one-on-one clients, is that oftentimes we hear people who want to sign up for coaching kind of are in the mindset of, oh, well, I have a vacation coming up or the holidays are coming up. I should wait until things like slow down until I focus on this. Like how many times have we heard that over the years? And I think that mindset will definitely apply to what we're going to talk about today. So, yeah, we're going to talk about the holidays, but this can really be applied to any time in your life where it feels like you're essentially going to be thrown off, if you will.
Yeah, it's macro and micro. Micro, I'll start on Monday, and then you start zooming out a little further. I'll start next month. I'll start next week. I'll start when this season calms down. But there will always be a reason for you to not start. There's always going to be something in the way. So understanding the different levels of application, whether it's for nutrition or for training, we'll go through all the pillars, but there are different protocols and different levels you can apply for each, so that you're always doing something and it's not just letting everything fall to the wayside.
I find that when we get on consult calls with clients or prospective clients, one of the, I would say, number one questions that come up, kind of you go through everything on the call, right? And you're like, any questions? And almost always when there is a question, it's something related to, so I have this thing coming up, or I have this vacation coming up, or I have these social events coming up. Do you think I should wait until after then to get started? And I'm always team like, no, let's get started right away. And I want to clarify, I don't mean that from like, let's get the client, like let's get them in standpoint. I mean it as a life is going to happen during your health and fitness journey. And so let's coach you through how to manage those things without derailing your health and fitness. Let's coach you through how to go to a wedding and not binge, or how to go on a vacation and not completely fall off track. And so, like Josh was just saying, we want to be able to make health and fitness fit within our life in a way that is not going to keep kicking the can down the road. Oh, I'll do it next time. I'll do it after the vacation. I'll start after the trip. I think that that's something that always comes up. And we see that happen a lot with the holidays, where people, I'll start the coaching after the holidays. I don't want to have to worry about my fitness or my exercise or my nutrition during the holiday season. When in reality, for a lot of people, October is partly holiday season, and then November is holiday season, and then December is holiday season. And so, are we going to say, I'm not going to pay attention to anything health related for the next 3 months? Because that's kind of what the holiday season is. And so that again comes back down to kicking the can down the road till January. So what can we do now? What action can we take instead of waiting till Jan 1st?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is it's their mindset and how they may have approached fitness up until this point because we know a lot of people sort of have that all or nothing mindset when it comes to their health and fitness goals. Like if they can't do things perfectly, but also in the same exact way that they have always done them because that quote unquote worked, then they feel like they shouldn't show up at all. When we know there's so much middle ground there that can make a huge difference in your consistency, in your progress, in how you feel about yourself. It just matters. So when you get good at embracing that middle gray area, like we call it, that's really the secret to being consistent for the whole entire year rather than, like you said, Joelle, having maybe upwards of 3 months where it's like you don't do anything because life is happening.
And those 3 months you talked about potentially starting at Halloween come right after the 3 months of summer. So really, like, oh, well, summer's busy too. It's always something going on in summer. That's 6 months. So half the year are you doing nothing? But Joel, you brought up a good point with the discovery calls, and anyone who's been on a call with me knows I take this a step further. Not only do I recommend you start with that busy thing coming up or that vacation, whatever it is, I go a step further in saying that if you don't have that thing, which I hope you do at some point, we're still going to practice that thing. So we're going to take some time off from your specific protocols and say, all right, for this, maybe it's a 5-day period. We're not tracking, we're not training the same way. Here are the things we're going to focus on. And by doing that, that's how we create this lifestyle. When you fully understand, it's not just theoretical. These are the things you could do when you can't track, when you can't train. It's been put into implementation. It's been practiced. So now the next time you actually have that in real life and a coach isn't in your corner, you know how to navigate that season. You know how to navigate that event, that week, that month, that year, that whatever it is, because you have practiced and put those tools into your tool belt. So forget if you have an actual event coming up, that's perfect. If you don't, we still want to practice that. So we're going to pretend you're away for a period of time anyway. But if we dive into this, kind of do a little background as far as where we just came back from. So our families just got back from vacation in Disney. Joelle, I know
Would
you're
you
still
call it
feeling
a
the effects of
vacation?
that. I mean,
Was it a
by
vacation?
Eh,
We got back from
definition,
a
maybe
trip. A trip.
a
it
trip.
was a
We
trip.
took a
It was
trip.
a trip. If you guys have been to Disney, obviously you know it is not relaxing in any way, shape, or form. But the kids had a blast, and that
Yeah.
is literally what it's all for. But with that in mind, obviously we're not going to the gym. We have very minimal control over what we're putting into our bodies. But that said, minimal control is still control, so we can still make the best of each individual situation. Um, Obviously, we don't need to talk much about movement and when it comes to the pillars in Disney, because you're moving 20,000 steps a day and it
Yeah.
feels like double that because it's so nuts. But just to kind of tackle our different mindsets, our different approaches towards, the nutritional side. So we can start there. For myself, and even, going into the trip, like, you guys know how we handle the ultra processed stuff and enjoying in moderation. But that's even a conversation we'll have with Kai, and we will when Cora understands, a couple days before, like, hey, we're going to cut back. We're not really going to do the sweet stuff before we leave, Kai, because, over the next few days, like, we're going to be enjoying everything, like whatever you want, basically, within reason, you can have whatever you want. So let's kind of scale back before we go. But getting there, if there's a fun dessert or treat at lunch and dinner and he wants it, and a lot of times he didn't. Like, there were a couple meals out where he's like, nah, he had a couple bites of whatever the treat was, whether it was the ooey
Ooey
gooey.
gooey toffee cake.
Yeah,
Oh,
He
that was
so
nuts.
good.
he like took 2 bites and he was like, okay, I'm done. And it's like
Yeah.
he's learned that over time because we don't one always restrict these fun foods. Like we are a family who regularly has ice cream nights and pizza nights, and we enjoy these things in true moderation. So he knows, like, oh, I don't know when I'm gonna have this again, so I need to eat all of this right now. Like he like it's just it's incredible to me to witness that happen with someone so young because he was so intuitive with what he wanted that day. And that's really what we should all be striving for when it comes to eating out or eating anything is, listen to your body. When your body's telling you you're full, all right, we're going to stop eating. You don't have to feel like you finish everything in front of you. Although I will say I finished my ooey gooey toffee cake, no problem that
All
day.
4 rounds of it.
I
um,
think, yeah, Alessandra, to that point, I mean, obviously Kai and Sloan are about 2.5 years apart, maybe. And but I noticed those same things. First of all, I think I was really surprised as Sloan kind of came into her like toddlerhood, right? How much kids very, very intuitively follow their hunger and satiety cues. Like they eat when they're hungry and they stop when they're full. And that's also why, I think that a lot of our kids' nutrition has to do with the way we speak about food, right? And similarly to you guys, we don't restrict. It's not like you can't have a piece of Halloween candy or you can't have ice cream here and there. You can have those things, but we've also made them so that they're not really that big of a deal in our
Right.
house. Like we're not like, oh, nope, that's a bad food. You can't have that. We can't have a lot of bad foods or like we'll get fat. Like that's not how any of us speak about food with our children, whether it's a nutrient dense food or a non-nutrient dense food. And so, to that point, we go to Disney and like sometimes the kids want ice cream, sometimes they don't, sometimes they want an apple for a snack. But like there's been plenty of times where I'll say to Sloan, do you want this or this? And she's picking like the vegetable over the, Rice Krispie treat or whatever it is. And so I think we always assume as parents that like they're going to want the sweet treat and they're going to want the candy and they're going to want all the bad stuff and how am I going to handle it. But the truth is like we just don't really put those foods on a pedestal, and that was something that I was really cautious of early on with Sloan, where we didn't necessarily say like you have to earn your cookie or you can't have your cookie until you finish all of your dinner or cookies are a really really special treat. Like we just kind of didn't put them on this pedestal and make them feel that special, and I find that it just kind of takes away the forbidden allure of it. And then it's like, oh yeah, you want a few bites of ice cream, okay, cool, here, have your few bites
Yeah.
of ice cream. Like we just don't make a big deal of it. And I think that's actually been helpful for their unknowingly to them, but their relationship with food.
And this is something that applies to adults also. So if you're constantly restricting these things or you are putting these sweet treats and, things that you think you cannot have because you want to make progress
That was a
on
lot
that
of air quotes.
uh, on that pedestal, um, it's going to be the same thing. But I do want to plug our new freebie that we just dropped last week,
Yeah.
which is a full guide about kids' fitness, health, nutrition. We give you examples of things that we feed our kids, how we set up their plates when it comes to meals. It's completely free. You just go on our website, or maybe Josh can
Link
link
is in the
it.
show notes.
He'll link it in the show notes for you. Just put your email in. We'll send it over via email and you can download it right away. But we put so much into that. So if this topic, as far as like the kids side of things, intrigues you and it's something you want to learn more about, go download that. And I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it here on the podcast. But I just wanted to plug that really quick because that's such a big resource. I know a lot of you guys were like waiting for us to drop for so long.
And that is like the desserts, the treat side of things while we were away. But even just like eating throughout the day. Now, obviously, it's very easy to find calorically dense foods, and we talk about this all the time, but just in general, wherever you are, protein tends to be kind of hidden and
Artist.
forgotten. It's much harder to find versus fats and carbs are much more abundant in most of the things that you're finding in fast food and you're eating out. So just being mindful of that, prioritizing and choosing meals that start with the protein name, like whether it's chicken or like, a lot of times we just did like a chicken salad or a chicken on salad, not a chicken
Yeah,
salad.
I will say I was pleasantly surprised, and this may just be the restaurants we typically gravitate
Yeah.
towards at Disney. But we went to it was called Ohana, and then we went to Liberty Tavern. So one was think like Thanksgiving meal, which like applies here. We could talk about how we would kind of take that approach on Thanksgiving too. And then the other ones, it's all you can eat, like how would you describe that,
It's
Ohana?
Like,
almost it's almost like a Brazilian steakhouse. So you got like
yeah,
this, you
Kinda.
got the
it was
shrimp
very
coming out. It's
protein heavy.
very protein heavy. They'll just keep bringing it out and until you're ready to stop eating it. Chicken, steak, shrimp.
Shrimp.
Was that the big three? Was that
Yeah,
the other
those
one?
were the big three, but like you're getting as much as you want of those things throughout the whole meal, which is really cool. But I think, circling back around to making this more about the holidays, like, yeah, I think typically when we go to someone's house, you're typically not going to find a ton of like super high protein options. Maybe on Thanksgiving
You got a
because
ton of turkey.
turkey is like the main thing, ham people do. But when you're traveling here and there to gatherings or whatnot, typically protein is not going to be the most popular choice when people are like serving these dishes. So it is something you kind of have to be a little more intentional about, and something I've always recommended to our clients. Like if you're eating at a restaurant, that's a little bit easier because you can kind of scour the menu and choose like that high protein option. But if you're going to someone's house, bring up a high protein dish that you know that you love. So, offer to bring, even if it's considered a side, like maybe you bring something that's high protein that you know will go over well, like our chicken meatballs. Like that would be a great thing to maybe make them barbecue chicken or buffalo chicken, put little toothpicks in them and bring them, and they're great little picky foods, but they're high in protein. So just one example of something that you could do to kind of like be protein forward with your thinking when you're going to someone's house or whatnot for the holidays.
Yeah, and then even the quick stuff. So those were our main dinners. We had the quick stops, but we would kind of check the menus ahead of time, see what wasn't just like mac and cheese and chicken tenders. And our kids lived on that a lot while we were away because those are just the easy things that they were going to eat. Try to get them some chicken, some fruits, some veggies. But again, we were gone for 3.5, 4 days, making the best of what we could.
They did have like the little yogurts.
Yep.
I will
Yeah.
say the breakfast I was pleasantly surprised with. Like I know there was a couple days, Joelle, I think you had it the first day, I had it the second day. It was like a bowl with eggs. I think there were potatoes,
Yeah.
beans, like a bunch of
Avocado,
different
beans.
veggies in
Yeah.
there, which was honestly not the worst choice at a hotel breakfast. And it was decently good. I got a couple of hard-boiled eggs on the side to add a little extra more protein. So,
Yeah.
there are things you can do to just be doing your best when it comes to
Yeah.
making the most of what you have available to you.
I will say too,
Um,
for anyone who has an Amex or gets access to the airport lounges, that one that we go to, leaving Disney every time, is an absolute game changer. So it's like
Is it
it's
like
free.
a Amex, like the Delta Lounge?
yeah, yeah.
What is it?
It's basically the same
Some
thing.
kind of premier lounge, but you like the breakfast we had the other day, it was like really good, different types of sausage, but chicken sausage,
Scrambled eggs.
That's
scrambled eggs,
nice.
all kinds of
Yeah.
fruit. You
Like
got your espresso
you could
makers.
build your plate based on what they had, and it was kind of just simple single ingredient foods, and it
Yeah.
was like, okay,
That's
like
perfect.
this is fine. This is
Yeah.
doable. It's not my breakfast I make at home, but it's gonna get the
Yeah.
Mine
job
pretty much
done.
was.
I know yours was.
I keep it simple. But yeah,
I think
finding your go-to. Sorry, Joel, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I would agree that while we were traveling, the food choices, you mentioned before, Josh, like having minimal control, but still using that minimal to the best of your ability, right? And like you said, there was a day where we kind of did that pickup lunch. We ordered from somewhere, we picked up, but we ate it there. I don't remember the name of that place, but it was like chicken teriyaki bowls and like, there were different salads and different options there that had a protein, a carb, a vegetable, roughly. Um, and so, we did what we could to make choices, even though we were away and even though we didn't know the exact calories or macros in something, we tried to make choices based on, something that would potentially resemble how we might eat at home or trying to have some carbs and get some protein in. And this might not be everyone's cup of tea, but like Brant and I also packed protein with us. Like we packed to go protein shakes, like Fairlife shakes. And sometimes we'll pack like our protein powder and just keep that in the room so that when you need a snack or you're in between meals, like we went back for some of those lunch times, throw down a protein shake just because knowing, hey, I know my breakfast maybe was not as protein heavy as it normally would have been at home. Let me throw down a scoop of protein or a protein shake and have that kind of as some background.
Yeah, no, and I think some of you may be listening to this and might be of the mindset like, hey, you're on vacation, you should just fully enjoy yourself. Why bother? Why even focus on this at all if it's just a week or a few days? And I think for us, and I think we can all agree here, it's not necessarily about like, oh, I want to just keep hitting my macros or, do this so that I don't lose any of my progress in a few days. It's not about that. It's about
But
feeling
it can
Makes you
be.
feel
It can be.
good.
it
Yeah.
Yeah.
can be, but it just makes us feel good. So like we needed as much energy as humanly possible
Yeah.
to wrangle 4 kiddos, and I'm pregnant, and like you want to keep digestion on point. You want all of the other biofeedback side of things to be as normal as possible because
Right.
when you like we eat a very specific way at home. Like we're very intentional about protein and fiber and whole foods. So if we went the complete opposite route and just didn't care and just threw down whatever, I know for a fact my sleep would be crap. I'd be a little more stressed. My digestion would be off. That would make me feel cranky and walking around Disney with a big pregnant belly. Not that it's that big yet, but like being pregnant, your digestion is already off. So it's all of those little things that like you might not necessarily think about or really seem to care too much about until they're off. And it's like, oh, I really don't feel good. I'm not going to enjoy myself as much as if I did feel good. So for us,
I,
it's really mostly about that.
and I saw that immediately in our kids, like in our kids eating differently than how they would have normally eaten at home. Like, sorry to out my girls here, but like my girls were not going to the bathroom as much as they normally would have at home.
Yep.
And that was like just an immediate biofeedback thing that I noticed about them because I'm like, they're not having the amount of fiber and protein and such that they would normally be having at home. And I remember we all sat down for one meal and we were like, oh, a vegetable, thank God. Like all of us got sat down, I think it was at Ohana, and we're like, oh, God bless a vegetable. Because it like you create, like, I know it sounds so silly to some people, but like you get to a point where like, I know that's going to make me feel better, that I
Yep.
actually see it. And I'm like, oh, a vegetable, good. Like I'm going to feel so much better from that. I'll get some fiber from that. That will feel good for my body.
Yep.
And I think, yeah, we got to a point where we were all just like craving nutrients.
Yeah.
No
And,
doubt.
you know, that's not to say you can't go out and enjoy a Christmas dinner.
Yeah.
Like if there is a day where you just really are not eating at your norm, it's just a day. It's just a day or
Yeah.
two, maybe at max. And the best way to get back on track, quote unquote, is to just get back to your normal eating habits. And within a few days, things start to regulate. So I feel like, if you are in a situation where you don't have control or there really aren't that many great options, don't let that stress you out to the point where you're like, oh, crap, like I'm going to totally screw up everything. Just make the most of what you have. And then once you're back home, don't continue that. Try to get back to your normal habits and routines as soon as possible.
I'm glad you brought that all up because that's kind of the next thing I wanted to dive into a little bit. It's why would you do this? You're on vacation. You're supposed to have fun. This allows you to actually have more fun, to have more energy, to sleep better, to feel better. You're not going to enjoy it as much if you're feeling run down and tired and just generally blah. For those of you who are new listeners, since we've switched things up, I struggled with Barrett's esophagus for over a decade. I was very, very sick, felt like I was literally having a heart attack every day for almost 2.5 years. And I was still struggling with it, not to that point, but on our honeymoon. So we had gone to Maui, and this is the coolest place I've ever been in my entire life. It just feels majestical from the moment you fly in through the mountains on this isolated island. And from the moment we took off and left where we're left Connecticut, I was just starting a countdown timer of when we could go home. Like that's how vacations were for me for a very long time, for over a decade, because I felt so terrible. Everywhere we went, I would be looking up where the closest ER was in case I had to run in and get something to, get the symptoms back down, pass out, just all these crazy things I was dealing with. So for a long time, this was a non-negotiable as far as like just to feel like I wasn't dying and to be wherever I was for some fraction of time, because it wasn't gonna be the whole time. I was going to be worried and anxious and feeling crappy for a good majority of it. But for some period of time, like what were the things that allowed me to feel my best? So for those of you who might view this as extreme, this is allowing you to get the most out of all aspects of your life, especially when you're away and doing all these fun things.
I also want to point out, because this is something that was really helpful for me throughout my health and fitness journey. And hopefully, there's a listener that could benefit from this as well. It's not it's not this or that. It's this and that. And I think that that's a really, really big, simple, but easy phrase to keep in mind. It's not, you're going to have vegetables while you're away, or you choose the ice cream. It's I could go out to dinner and have chicken and vegetables, and I can also have dessert. And so I think that that's a really helpful thing for people to keep in mind. It's very easy for the three of us to sit here and preach balance, right? But in the beginning of our own health and fitness journeys, we didn't understand balance, right? We all bounced from different extremes in our health journey. Like Josh, what you're describing with Barrett's and the extremes that you had to take to feel better. are not necessarily the extremes you had to take now. When I was missing a menstrual cycle, there were extremes I was taking then to try and get my cycle back that I'm not taking now. And eating disorders, totally just different extremes happening in our own health and fitness journeys. And so I think that if you're living in any of those extremes right now, it's easy to hear other people be like, balance, balance, balance. You got to find your own balance. You got to find moderation. And that can be really hard for people. And so, we've gotten to a point where we have learned, the three of us, that it's not about this or that. It's about this and that there is room for both things in moderation. But I think people get really caught up in feeling like they have to choose or they have to live in some sort of extreme camp in order to be healthy. And that's not what this is. Yes, health behavior is, and being healthy, quote, is about what we are consistently doing the vast majority of the time. But that does not mean that you can't go out. You can't have dessert. You can't ever, have some fun foods or have the Halloween candy with your kid for a few days. So I just want to make that clear. It's not or, it's and.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people also are of the mindset that they kind of view this short-term vacation or holidays or whatever as like the end all be all. So like instead of viewing it as a few days here and there, they kind of view it. I mean, in a way, you kind of said this in the beginning, how it is a 3-month period. And yeah, that might be true for some people, but for others, it might just be those 5 days like Halloween, Thanksgiving, a weekend here, a weekend there. Are those 5 days the end of the world if they're not on point? No. And it's really what we're doing most of the time consistently. And I think a lot of people still think being consistent means being consistent 100% of the time. You're
Perfectly.
perfect all the time. And it's not about perfection. That's also something that holds a lot of people back from starting coaching because they feel like they have to show up perfectly, track all their macros, do all their check-ins perfectly, not just be like that all-star student, when in reality, coaching is not about that at all. We can't teach you anything if you are that all-star student. You probably don't need coaching. So, a lot of our clients listening probably can relate to the fact that there are going to be weeks where things are just crap, and it's our job to help you get back to feeling your best, but also to work through any of the struggles that may have come up that maybe you can do a little bit better next time, or, you can improve in some way. So know that consistency does not equal perfection either.
And if we can sidestep this into the training department here. Now, obviously this trip, sun up to sun to long after sundown, there was no focus on anything besides running around with the kids. But generally, or even, I guess, even leading up to this trip, like we made sure we got as many days consistent, maybe parked in a couple extra days of training prior to leaving, and then knowing we were going to have a solid 4.5, 5 days off after that. That's kind of the strategy we took this time. But our last Disney trip, I know you were up early doing your runs because you were getting ready for a half.
This made me really sad because we were in Disney 6 months ago. Cora was 8 months. So I was 8 months postpartum. I just started training for the 10K. I started running again. I was like in a great spot. So I would wake up on a Disney day at like 5 a.m. before the kids would get up. I ran around Disney, around our hotel, got my run in, and then I would come back, shower, and we would go to the parks. I would hit like 30,000 steps. Like it was insane. But I felt good. Like I was feeling well. I was just in a very different phase of life than this part of the trip. The night we got there, we got in so late on Monday night, and we ordered like room service, like just from the Disney hotel, and Kai got chicken nuggets. I had some of his chicken fingers. So I'm sitting there eating my fried chicken. I'm like, how much has changed in the last 6 months? But yeah, I mean, I feel like every circumstance when it comes to vacation or holidays, maybe you're traveling to families' houses during this holiday season and you don't have gym access, like it's going to look different for everybody in every situation. So this trip, we're not strength training. We're not waking up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym before the kids get up in Disney World. Like it's just not a priority right now. So kind of like Josh said, like we lifted that morning before we left. And then when we got back home, I kind of just stacked the rest of my week on those days that we got back home and completed my week of workouts that way. But there's no right or wrong when it comes to how you set this up. If you take the whole week off, guess what? You're not going to lose all your muscle mass in a week or two. It's just not going to happen. I think that was a good lesson that COVID and the pandemic taught us. I know we both talked about that a lot during that time, Joelle,
Yep.
but there are things that you can also do. So maybe you bring some bands with you in your suitcase if you're traveling to family's house and you wake up and get some body weight and band workouts in, which we have a whole program in the app specifically for that. So there are options, and it's going to look a little bit different every time that you have something going on, is my point.
Yeah. And I think ultimately it depends on your goal, you know, and
Right.
like you said, it depends like where you're staying. Are you staying with family? Are you staying in an Airbnb? Like previously we've celebrated Christmas with Brant's family and they're in Pennsylvania. And what I would do if we were staying with them for X amount of days, I would look up nearby gym. I would get a either like they had like a 3 day pass or whatever, and I would get a pass in advance. And I had no problem first thing in the morning, and no one else had a problem first thing in the morning with me being like, hey, I don't necessarily mean on Christmas, but like during that stay of like, hey, I'm going to head out and go to the gym. Anyone want me to pick you up a coffee on the way back? Like, most of the time, I think people feel really awkward. I know we've heard this from clients before of like, I just feel really bad that I'd be like going and exercising like during family time. Like it's 40 minutes. Like
Right.
you could go for a run for 20 minutes. No one's going to be mad or like miss you for those 20 minutes. And you're not missing anything in those 20 minutes or even that hour anyway. And this can go in so many different directions because then it comes down to like, well, does your family support you and your goals? And like, they probably want to see you pursuing your goals, which is a whole other topic for another time, that I'm sure we could get into. My point was in the past, depending on where I'm going or where I'm traveling, like Brant's whole family knows that we work out and we enjoy exercise. And some of those times, Brant and I would both leave and go to the gym and come back and do breakfast with everyone. And other times I would go by myself and he'd hang home. Like it just depended on the situation. And so same thing with food. Like, could you get Instacart delivery? Could you get some food prepped with you? Could you bring some protein powder from home? So you have that stuff. Like there are ways to stay as prepared as you can. But the other thing that I wanted to come back to real quick is just how, you know, Disney is a great example of this. We, yes, didn't have a ton of control over where we could, I mean, we could have some control over where we could eat, but I mean, we're only presented with the options we're presented with, right? And then we have to do what we can with what's on the menu or the place we chose to eat. And as much as that week was out of routine for us three and our kids for that matter, it was out of routine. We weren't getting our strength training in. We weren't eating all the fiber and protein things that we could at home. We still had several non-negotiables, right? That we tried to stick with. And that's the other thing that I wanted to point out about like the and versus or. It's not like, well, we could choose to be on track during vacation, or we could choose to just let it be a free for all. It was, hey, there's going to be a lot of things that are out of our control this trip, but also we're still prioritizing our water intake. We know we're getting in our step count. We're adding electrolytes to our water, especially with the heat and humidity while we were gone. And so we still tried to look for vegetables where we could, or look for protein where we could. And so I think it's just important to keep in mind that, you know, whether you're traveling for the holidays or you're going to someone's house or you're going to be away and you're staying somewhere, even if you can't do all of the things that you would normally do at home, even just doing one or two of those things is enough. Maybe you're like, okay, I don't have control over any of the food and I'm not going to get strength training in this week. But I'm going to still make sure I nail my water, and I'm still going to make sure I have protein with every meal. Like sometimes you can just zoom out and focus on the big picture. We chose not to lift while we were in Disney. But there have been other vacations where I lifted every day when I was away on a trip. So that's where it also depends on like where you're staying, what your goals are. When we were all 20 something year olds pre-kids, we were like, hashtag dedication, hashtag the grind, never miss a workout, never miss a Monday. And we were all in our 20s and lifting and doing everything no matter what. And now it's like, oh, actually, I think I also want to have a little bit of extra family time today.
Right.
Or like, I think I don't want to get up at 4 a.m. to go lift so that we could be at the bus by 6 a.m. for Josh in Disney. So
You're welcome.
I actually I'll have you know, I packed gym clothes and I said to Brant the first night I got there, I'm like, do we know if there's a fitness center in here? And he goes like, you think you're lifting tomorrow morning? And I was like, I don't know. I'm gonna see. Like, I'm gonna set an alarm and see how I feel. And then Josh texted, he's like, okay, we're gonna be at the bus at this time. And I was like, oh, so we gotta be at breakfast at like 6:45. And then I was like, yeah, okay, never mind. I'm not gonna lift. Sometimes you go in with the intention and it doesn't always go as planned.
Yep.
But my point is we all still kind of did what we could to have health behaviors that felt good for us and, knew that would make us feel good.
For sure. And again, there have been so many different types of trips, whether based on how long it is, where we're going, how we're getting there, what we're doing when we're there. Like we've packed bands in the suitcase.
We brought our adjustable dumbbells.
Yeah, if we're driving to like Vermont for the weekend, we'll bring some bands, a kettlebell, and the adjustable dumbbells. Maybe go for a run, do a couple circuits, and just get the blood flowing and just kind of keep things moving. Just again, not even like it's helping us toward progressive overload in this specific routine that we're in right now, but it just makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And even going, an RPE of 5 instead of a 9, doing 2 sets instead of 3 or 4. And making it a circuit instead of straight sets or supersets, like just getting something in. Again, it's not because, I need every last pump. I need to do everything I can to maximize muscle gain for the next month. You just feel good. It just makes your day better. It keeps you in that consistent routine. So you're enjoying whatever it is that you're doing. I will say when it circles back to, we circle back to the mindset pillar, I did bring my journal. It did not leave my suitcase. But I did meditate every night before bed. So again, a couple things that you might plan to do. Maybe you only check one box, and really like at the end of the day, I think it was maybe 3 core essentials for my entire routine that I did every single day religiously. And a quick 10-minute meditation before bed did make the cut for myself. I don't know if you guys kept anything up on that end.
I started my day with water every day. Like
Yep.
I made sure I got up before Cora got up early because he would like open his eyes and be like, Disney, like let's go.
Let's roll, motherfuckers.
But I before she got up, I would prioritize like getting myself put together, drinking
Yep.
my water, making sure I had electrolytes and everything packed that I would need for the day. So like little things like that. Like, yeah, I could have just slept until she woke up and then we would both have been scrambling, but just setting myself up for success as much as possible in that tiny window that we had. But
I
going
think
back,
also,
go ahead,
oh,
Joelle.
sorry. I was just going to add another thing that probably all of us kept as a staple that we sometimes even forget at this point as a staple because it's just so normal for us. But we all tried to get good sleep when we were there too. We were not out till midnight, and even if we had no kids with us, we still would not have been out till midnight, like at Disney or whatever, doing like late night park nights. And I remember the last night when we were all going back, I'm like, it was late for us, right? That the fireworks show was at what, 8:30 or something. By the time we were going back, it was probably 9 o'clock, and we were all shot. And I remember seeing people getting to the parks, and I was like, why are people just getting here right
Joelle
now?
was-
Are they insane?
You literally
I was
turned to
stunned.
me and you were like shocked.
I literally stunned. Like they're just starting to go out at 9. And some of them had babies with them. Like I'm not talking about like 25-year-old kids. These were like grown ass adults who had toddlers and babies with them who were just getting to the park at 9. And I was like, I cannot even imagine. So I think something that we all tried to prioritize while we were there that we maybe forgot about was like, we all tried to get some decent sleep too. We weren't all probably in bed by 8:30 like we normally would have been at home, but we were all probably in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock and sleeping till 6 a.m. or so, which is a decent amount of sleep. And I think that's just another thing that I wanted to add as one of our sort of non-negotiables of something from home that we tried to bring with us.
Pre-game used to be 10 o'clock. That used to be 10 o'clock before you go out.
I don't know how I
pregame.
survived.
But it's funny. I turned to
Yeah.
Brant that last day. We took Sloan and Kai on the racetrack. And I'm like, I would love doing like, if it was a couple's trip to some island, even like Vegas, going to see some shows, eating food, whatever. But I'm like, I would not make it past 10 o'clock. Like
Yeah.
I would not be able, like, how do I enjoy these things if I'm like, okay, I'm tapping out, it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah. And
I just don't even
even
think I'd enjoy it. I
Right.
just
no.
don't even think first of all, I'd feel like shit the next day, but I just don't even think I would enjoy that. Like I get to like 9 o'clock, like when we were finishing that, and granted we had been walking all day and everything, but like 9 o'clock when we were leaving that park, I was like, I cannot wait to get in bed. Like
Yeah.
there was no part of me that was like, oh yeah, I'd stay for another 2 hours if you guys wanted to. I'd be like, see ya,
No.
have fun.
Yeah. And I'm very big, like even when we go to Vermont with family or we go out, I mean, in the past for holidays and stuff at families' houses, or even if we're hosting, how many times have we been hosting and I will excuse myself and go to bed?
Every
And
time. It's not how many
it's
times.
literally every time because that it just matters that much to me. And I know that I'm literally sitting there as like a shell of a human. I'm not contributing
Yep.
to any conversations. I'm not enjoying myself. No one's enjoying my company. So I'm
Yep.
totally okay with excusing myself and going to sleep, knowing that it makes me better. And no one's ever given me a hard time about it, really. I think maybe you guys used to joke a little
How
bit,
would you know
but
you're sleeping?
what?
How would you know you're sleeping by the
Yeah,
time we
that's
have
true.
this
Maybe you
conversation?
do when I go to bed. But no, it's just an example of, again, not letting other people's opinions dictate what you ultimately want to do and what makes you happy and what makes you feel your best.
For sure. So that kind of encapsulated mindset and habits. Joel, was there anything else you wanted to throw in either of those two departments?
I just wanted to mention something because as we were just kind of getting prepped for this call and we knew we were going to be talking about the holidays, it reminded me that Coach Brad, he's our PhD in exercise science here at Levolution, one of our great coaches. He had written an email for our email list. It must have been at some point last year for the holidays. And he talked about his number one holiday habit tip. And it was this whole email. We'll probably get it up on the blog too. And Alessandra, I could give you the link for the show notes if you want to. But he wrote this whole email about sleep and how sleep is the number one top priority holiday habit. And you normally think like exercise or, getting your protein in or your fiber in. And sleep was his number one habit. And he cited this research that was done, and it was a survey of over like 24,000 people and these graphs of showing their sleep patterns during the holiday season. And it showed that they slept the least over Christmas and New Year's. And they had the greatest variability in their sleep consistency. And they took the longest time to fall asleep over New Year's and Christmas. And ultimately, people's sleep was just terrible kind of during the holiday season. And so this email went on to kind of explain why is that an issue, right? Why is it an issue to not get great sleep over the holidays? And there's, of course, many issues with not getting enough sleep, but he specifically dove into things like impacting decision making, and that when we don't get enough sleep and we are getting less, REM sleep, we make more impulsive decisions, we make riskier decisions, we don't think things through all the way. And then we could also relate that, right, to like our food choices or our ability to exercise. And we know that when we don't get enough sleep, our hunger and satiety cues change. And so I just thought that was an interesting thing to add about like sleep being his number one tip for the holiday season.
That is interesting. And I think ironically, there's always the posts that start floating around during this time of year too, that it's like, it's not the holidays that make us sick and it's flu season, blah, blah, blah. It's the fact that we're not sleeping, we're more stressed, we're not sticking with our consistent nutrition, we're not
Yep.
exercising
We're
regularly.
not
So
outside, we're not in sunshine.
all of those things matter. So if you can get ahead of that and try to be as consistent, not perfect, as possible with all of these little habits and with the 5 pillars, it's going to positively impact your immune health this year. So if nothing else, if you don't care about your goals or aesthetic goals or strength or anything, and you're really just like, I really don't care this time of year, let that be your motivator. Because I think we all can agree nobody enjoys being sick.
Fair enough.
Yep. Yep.
So oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna shameless plug that on Friday we had an email go out kind of on that topic. But Coach Alex, we always do a Friday educational email, and Coach Alex sent out an email this last week that was on the immune system and gut connection. And she talked about what you could be doing to improve your gut health this kind of winter season, holiday season, because a lot of your immune health stems from your gut and your digestion. So if you're not on the email list, get on the email list. But if
Get
not,
on it.
all of those emails will become blog posts. So you should be able to find it on the website eventually.
You shall, you shall. So to recap, guys, what we just kind of dove through, and this is the central theme for most of these episodes, it's relating the L5 method to different areas so you know how to apply them in certain ways. But the L5 method, those are our 5 pillars of health: training, nutrition, mindset, movement, and habits. And just figuring out which protocols make sense for you when you are in a dedicated season, when you are in a busier season, different levels to those different things. But again, there's going to be plenty of seasons in life where you will not be perfectly on plan. That's why it's so important to understand all the tools you have at your disposal so you can stop riding that up and down roller coaster of progress and constantly spinning your wheels and ending right back where you started. So by understanding how to eat mindfully, move your body, control what you can control, all aspects of your health, you're going to see that monumental progress year after year, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Also, as a reminder, we are here to meet you where you are, and we provide a ton of free resources such as this podcast, our social media content, freebies on our site. For those of you who are new here and looking to get a taste of the L5 method, the freebies are really to kind of get you ingratiated in that. We also have the app, which over 1,000 of you are currently using and loving, which gives you access to the best training programs out there, as well as some general guidance on the other 4 pillars of health in the L5 method. And of course, our premium offer is one-on-one health coaching, where you get access to our team of experts who will optimize your health with protocols built specifically for you, so they do fit your lifestyle.